To all born-again Christians. A special end-time sign is the place of the third temple in Jerusalem. Because in this temple, the Antichrist will refer to himself being God. But about the location of the third temple in Jerusalem, there are still strong discussions. So I present at this point a new perspective and summarize the sensational new details as follows. The dispute over the location of the third temple is in full swing, which we will look at shortly. Here you see an alternative location of the third temple between the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. The third temple could have been built long ago, but nobody knows where is it being built. First, in Zion, the city of David, which has just been uncovered. Second, on the Temple Mount, to the right of the Dome of the Rock. Or third, left of the Dome of the Rock. Right down you see a picture of the city of David after Bob Cornuke, with the third temple left.
New insights about the temple location. The Big Temple Mount fake. None of the three protagonists of the future third temple in Jerusalem considered four aspects, as I researched myself. First potential location on the Temple Mount is right of the Dome of the Rock. Second potential site is on the Temple Mount between the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. Third potential location is in the city of David. First, the world power of the Romans under Emperor Hadrian had in the total destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Only one thing in mind, to prevent the constantly rebellious Jews once and for all from rebuilding their temple. Therefore, not only was the temple completely demolished stone by stone, as predicted by Jesus in Matthew 24 verse 2, but also the city of David and all the important buildings of the Jews in the vicinity of Jerusalem were razed to the ground. The Romans then carried the mountains of rubble onto a huge heap of rubbish, just as mountains of this kind historically always arise worldwide after total destruction and the extermination of people. And it was precisely on this huge garbage dump plateau that the Romans then completed their Fort Antonia with 1 legion of 6,000 soldiers and 4,000 servants on today's Temple Mount. The Romans did not have a further motive to veil the site of the former Temple of Solomon, and so they only buried cedar parts of the temple in the rubble, knowing full well that the Jews will find these temple remains at some point in the future and believe that here the first temple of King Solomon and the second temple of King Herod must have stood on the today's Temple Mount. Second, the Muslims were even more clever because they put an ingenious game of confusion on top of it. The alleged ascension of the Prophet Muhammad in Jerusalem from the Rock Moriah, where a kind of mausoleum was built, the Dome of the Rock, and next to it the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Allegedly, the idea should come from Sultan Saladin himself. This is said to have created the legend that Muhammad went to heaven from the Rock Moriah in Jerusalem. The fact is, however, that the Prophet Muhammad's ascension to heaven is said to have originally taken place in Mecca, until Saladin, centuries later, arbitrarily reinterpreted this in terms of power politics. Because in the Quran, the Surah 17 verse 1, it is only, "Praise be to him who let his servant travel at night from the holy prayer place, in Mecca, to the distant prayer place, which we have surrounded with blessings for to show him something of our miracles." Which of course means that Muhammad was only transferred to Jerusalem in order to pray at the alternative distant prayer place in Jerusalem. To this day, most Jews fear the building of the third temple on the Temple Mount as a total cause for war for all Muslims. Third, allegedly, the temple's water supply is said to determine where the Temple of Solomon is said to have been. It should be noted that the advocates of today's Temple Mount claim that the water supply for the ritual ablutions in the temple was brought to today's Temple Mount via extensive pipes from Bethlehem. But that is not conclusive, because the Romans built their own water viaducts for themselves at the beginning of the occupation in order to later supply their legion of soldiers and staff with around 10,000 people. Also, water coming so far from Bethlehem would have been too easily attacked by enemy troops for King Solomon to ever have taken such a risk. Solomon finally had his Gihon spring which could provide enough water for the temple purposes and the palace. The objection that this spring was far below the city of David is not an argument, because the transport of large amounts of water from deeper regions was the well-known technique of the Archimedean screw, a hand-driven spindle, which provided enough water for the Jews of that time could transport from the bottom to the top at the request of the temple operations. Fourth, again and again there is a struggle for the actual location of the sacrificial place of Isaac by Abraham on the rock Moriah, which for holy reason alone has to be decisive where temples 1 and 2 actually stood. Something very significant is particularly effective here: smoke offering places must be protected from the wind so that the smoke can always go to heaven, which Abraham was also aware of when he set off with Isaac. Ultimately, it is claimed that the threshing floor of the Jebusite must have been on top of the Temple Mount, the threshing floor that David once bought from the Jebusite. Reason: only up there was there enough wind to separate the chaff when threshing grain. Apparently, most of the Temple Mount protagonists never studied the ancient craft customs of farmers. First, after the harvest, a flail was used to thresh the grain in order to separate the grains from the ears. Then the chaff was separated from the grain, whereby the presence of wind is not necessary at all, but only follows the traditional principle of gravity or centrifugal separation. During the subsequent so-called wind sifting with the help of a so-named whirlpool, the farmer generated enough movements for a crosswind flow to separate the grains. After all, the chaff is far too valuable to be carried away by the wind far into the air, never to be seen again, because it was used as roughage, which was particularly valued by the large temple sacrificial cattle due to its relatively high content of structured crude fiber. These 4 examples show how the deliberate confusion around the Temple Mount, developed by the enemies of Israel, still contributes to the fact that even the Jerusalem Temple Institute is not 100% sure where the Solomonic Temple really stood. How stupid do many self-proclaimed temple researchers consider the Jews of 3,000 years ago and their proverbial wise King Solomon? The former FBI agent and investigative journalist Bob Cornuke is still closest to me with his City of David Third Temple theory.
Some Jewish Islamic Messiah will build the third temple. Like this Rabbi Shlomo Yehuda Yishkiyahu ben David 2021. Thank you for watching. There is no reason why the rapture doesn't happen all the time. Otherwise, there is still grace time to wake up lukewarm Christians in order to be ready to meet Jesus in the air. With a purpose to people you love, to preserve, to be left behind. Tell others about the upcoming events, which may start in 2021, and watch the 1-hour video End Time Report 1 on my YouTube channel Gerfried Baum. See you in the clouds, and then in heavenly Jerusalem.